Welcome back to another episode of the Poultry Network podcast. My name is Tom Willings.
And I am Tom Woolman.
Mr. Woolman, nice to see you. How are you keeping?
I'm all right. I sounded like I was reading my name off of a sheet there, didn't I? A bit like I didn't actually know what my name was, but rest assured, I do know what my name is.
It's got to be 6 months in. My skills at introduction don't get any better. I feel very out of my depth every time we press the record button. We've got a bit of a different episode lined up this week. We've got a technical session.
Tech sesh,
and this is layer focused. So to our friends in the meat industry, forgive us for focusing on layers, but our guest this week is very much a layer expert, layer guru, and hopefully the audience of producers will take a bit of value from our interview.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
shall we welcome him in?
Let's get into the interview, yeah. The Poultry Network podcast is brought to you by Poultry Network, the UK's digital resource for the poultry sector.
Alongside the podcast, we of course have our website and our New Look newsletter, delivering a weekly digest of news, market insight, technical features and industry analysis straight to your inbox, whatever part of the poultry sector you work in. Whether you're a producer, an integrator, egg packer, or a business within the supply chain across the UK.
If you're involved in poultry, it's completely free to read and subscribe. Visit Poultry Network, that's just poultry.network, in your browser and input your email. Once you have, make sure we are added to your contacts or safe sender list to ensure you never miss an episode.
And if you're a business supplying products or services to the sector, why not advertise where your customers already are?
To discuss podcast sponsorship, newsletter placements or digital campaigns, email jake@dmediagroup.com.
Poultry Network, unrivaled insights into commercial poultry production. We're joined by Dave Hodson Jr. from Rose Hill, the self-proclaimed vaccination guru. 55 years in business, Dave. Rose Hill have got a hell of a track record.
Yes. I mean, I have got a really good skincare regime, so that helps. But it's a family business, but we've been very lucky. The generation above me started working at the very inception of live vaccines being used in the UK. And he admits himself, nobody knew what they were doing. And because our customers needed them, we had to learn what to do. And now we look after, with St. David's, about 12 million laying hens, and work extensively with salmonella vaccines and in the rearing industry.
And I read in the brief 200 million layers and counting vaccinated. So I think that definitely qualifies as sort of building expertise. Over that period of time, 1970 onwards, the industry has changed and changed and changed again. And here we are, only last week we were talking about the welfare bill and the proposal to ban cages. So, production system, but scale, not to mention treatment regimes, etc., breeds, they've all changed. When you look back over your career and that of your forefathers, how have things changed and what's the environment out there now?
It's a fascinating journey, and the egg sector is so unique because we're not subsidised. You have to be smart and work hard to survive in this sector. And it's almost full circle. We had free range, then the cage was developed, then the colony cage was developed, and now free range has once again become the predominant production method. But what's so interesting about what I do is, if you think about it, a colony cage is the ultimate test. A multi-age site, hundreds of thousands of birds in one place. A respiratory disease can brew up and blow around very quickly. So unless you have absolute control over IB, TRT, ILT on a colony site, it just doesn't work. But now what have we got in free range? With the density of free range houses, all we've done is created almost a really big geographic colony site.
Yeah, we're emulating that same sort of stocking density that you're talking about with indoor cages.
Well, we've also opened up the pop holes and let the birds go out and fraternise with the local birds as well,
and enjoy a
Yes.
muddy puddle or two.
Yes, I mean, the whole point of a colony cage was nobody had control of coccidial worms. So what's the answer? You get them away from nature. And now we've reintroduced them to nature. So a lot of things have come back in. I mean, how do you control aggression? If you put a bird in a colony cage, your pecking order suddenly changes a bit. But now we've got colony systems going to barn, and all of a sudden, intense stockmanship comes to the fore again. So it all goes full circle. It's interesting to watch it transpire.
So, in terms of your work, then, Dave, as someone that's not as familiar with the laying industry, is most of your work done on pullet rearers, or is it done on site with birds in production?
What we You end up with like unique skill sets, and it's very niche what we do. So what I do is I get a live vaccine out of the fridge into that bird in its live state. So that means I work on behalf of Elanco with regards to teaching people how to use salmonella vaccine. I'm very proud of that because the UK's got one of the lowest salmonella prevalence rates in the world because the farmers work so hard and we work hard to make sure that they're supported. But I work with everything. So the laying industry, we've always had any layers we're involved with control IB. What's happened is we've picked up more customers and it's become more and more free range and as the market's changed. So I work right from that bird getting delivered onto a rearing site to the end of its laying period. And that period of time gets ever longer. I mean, I started, it was 70 weeks you'd deplete at. Now what we're looking at, we see 110 weeks. So the years go by faster as well.
So, and in terms of the main pillars then for effective vaccination, then if you could distill those for us, where would you start with those?
You have a lot of things in life where people go, it's just vaccinating. It's easy, you just do that, you just do this. But when you get it right, it's worth about 5 extra eggs per hen. When you get it right in the laying house, when you get it right in the rearing house. So in terms of monetary comeback, it's huge.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realise. I think, in my experience, when they're vaccinating, is they don't understand necessarily the cost of disease. Because if you're looking after a flock of birds and they have a disease, your result at the end isn't as good. But it's quite rare actually that the person doing the vaccinating crunches the numbers and says, "Well, look, this job that I'm doing today, if I get it wrong and the birds get IB." Actually, this could wipe X amount of thousand off of the off of the bottom line, and if you thought about it in that way, then you really pay attention, don't you?
Well, what tends to happen is you draw a lot of people that are like you. It just seems to be a rule in life, and I'm very much detail orientated, so you end up with the very detail orientated farmers. So if I take on somebody new, I say, right, sit down with the vet, we need to do X, Y, Z, we need to make sure all your team are fully trained up. And I say review it after a flock. And if it doesn't work, don't ever do it again. Say goodbye to me, it's all fine. You've tried it, nothing lost. But that doesn't happen, we don't lose people, we keep people because it works. Where I'd say it goes wrong is, this is a bit of a journey. But first of all, you have to understand that every bird needs to drink enough virus particles for the immunogenic effect to hit. So if you're not stabilizing your vaccine, so stabilizing vaccine means stopping it dying. So once a live vaccine's mixed, it starts dying straight away. And we developed certain products like Aviblue and different things in conjunction with other people that kept vaccine alive. So you need to keep that live vaccine stored properly. You need to mix it and suspend it properly in the water so it stays alive. And then you need to know how to make sure every hen in that house receives a dose of that vaccine. And sorry, go on.
No, I was going to ask you, Dave. That sort of points to a question I had in my ears. You've got training. You've mentioned training and the work that you're doing to improve, I guess, the application rather than the awareness that the vaccine is required. It's got to be about getting the vaccine into the bird, and this is what you're now speaking of. But how do you know if the job has been done well? You might know how to do it well, but how do you make sure that you've actually succeeded?
It's called the bottom line. So at the end of that flock, what's it done? And if it's you doing this job on behalf of a pullet rearer, it's does that customer return to buy your pullets? And the ways that you know a vaccination's been done correctly is you have to understand if the vaccine is in its live state when it's consumed, and you have to understand that the birds have consumed the vaccine. So we've done a lot of, it's called vaccine recovery work. So you'll mix and prepare the vaccine, but then you'll take a sample from the end of the water line after a period of 1.5 hours, say, and you'll make sure it's in its live state. So they'll do virus recovery on it. So we know it's alive for that long. Then how do we know that we've actually had each bird drink it? This, in my wife's words, makes me the most boring man in Britain, the fact that I enjoy this.
Well, this is the question I'm asking you, so I'm right behind you in boring stakes.
Everybody's interested to someone. So how I do that is it's called tongue staining. It's a very old method. But what I'll do is I'll mix up the amount of water I've calculated and I believe to be true, and I will put a very large amount of blue dye in it. I think blue in this case. Then what I'll do is after my stock solution's been consumed and I've used the method that I use, I will pick up 200, 300, 400 birds. I'll open their mouth and I'll score how blue their tongue is on a scale of 1 to 3. So I know with my methods, we refine everything. So now we're at a point where I can consistently get 96 to 98, 99%. And I've compared it to other methods that I see in the field and they can be hitting 60%.
How commonplace is it for people to do serology to test for titer levels? Because certainly when I was on breeders, that would be a pretty regular thing that we do a couple of times, and particularly at 22 weeks to make sure that all of the vaccines had been effective.
Serology is incredibly important, so you need serology. When you're working in the laying industry, that we use serology on all of our birds. So with every bird, we want to see their serology at 14 weeks after they've had the bulk of their lives to check the live administration. Then we'll do serology at 24 weeks. What we should see in that serology is a jump up of the titer or the level of immune cells in that bird from say 4 to 6 for certain diseases like Newcastle to about 8 to 10 usually. And we know that that bird's had its live vaccines properly and then it's inactivated properly and it's had a robust response. So that's how you would check for the actual physical administration of it. It's a muddy picture though using serology in a laying hen. Because if you're checking for antibodies to IB, they've already received several vaccines in rear. They may have been vaccinated in lay. If they get a field challenge, that will raise their titers also. So it's very performance-based, understanding your level of control of IB in laying hens. How many seconds do you get? How much secondary E. coli do you get? And what's your mortality rate? Have you got suppressed feed, suppressed water? So it is good old-fashioned stockmanship. You're actually observing the hen, how it's behaving, rather than relying on a metric, such as serology testing.
Yeah. Well, I know, and I can see now why you go to the tongue staining, because that's you're really looking at that specific vaccine, aren't you? And you're looking at how effective that vaccine uptake has been.
Once you know how long it lives for, and you know you've got the birds, you almost have to take a logical jump to say, well, it's for drank the live vaccine in an adequate quantity. It's hard for it not to be vaccinated.
While we're talking about blue tongues, I've just got a little anecdote which is springing to mind, and that is I've got 4 children, and when we go on our summer holidays, we always end up somewhere by the seaside that's selling ice creams, and my children, for whatever reason, they'll have this wide selection of ice creams to go from, and the flavour they always want is the bubblegum flavour. And it's bright blue. It looks like it shouldn't be good for you. And we'll do everything that we can to persuade them to have something else, but they want the bubblegum. And why do they want it? It's because it turns their tongue blue. And so they'll eat these ice creams, and then they'll spend the next hour showing each other their tongues and any other passerbys that are in the area. So, yeah.
It's the industries overlap. That's what I love about this game. So we got a hold of a yellow food dye from a food production plant in the 80s. And we use that to do the original tongue staining work. And now the blue that's in the Avi blue is called Ultimate Blue, which is a food colouring. So you just got a shed full of kids, really.
I'm trying to think, if we could administer vaccines through ice creams, we'd probably get very good uptake, wouldn't we? Very good.
Dave, vaccines and vaccination, I guess, for preventative measure to protect the bird based on what field challenge we expect them to encounter. But you were talking a moment ago about the wider environment and water lines and maybe the range, etc., etc. What are the kind of practices or non-negotiables in the rest of the health picture that you pay special attention to, and what kind of advice would you give?
I think that how I kind of see chickens, I see them almost like a car engine. So you wouldn't just say, right, I'm only going to put coolant in it, but no fuel and no water, nothing else. I'm just going to put just coolant, not put any oil in there. How I see it is you have to control respiratory disease, you have to control parasite burden, you have to control water quality, and you have to control the range. And no one part can be neglected. So it's the ability to actually lock in on each of those factors and make sure that's not going to be the reason, or it is not the current reason that flock is struggling. Because it doesn't matter how well you vaccinate if you've got 20,000 red mites a hen. And it doesn't matter how much you vaccinate and then control red mite if your water quality is very poor and they're getting too high a dose of certain heavy minerals, or there's a lot of bacteria in there. So it really is a question of controlling all of them. And again, when you talk about the range, I mean, I know not many ranges are getting much heavy use at the moment.
Not just at the moment.
They're probably getting well rested. They probably need it. But if you worm consistently and you're not controlling worms, but your range looks like the song, then that's going to drive worm burden. So you have to do all of it. You have to do all of it. If you've got sitting water in your range, you might be able to do just groundwork to reduce your need to use wormer if you take away the burden there.
I always think of bird health as being like just a big seesaw, isn't it? And there's things you can put on one side in terms of birds' immunity, and then there's things you can put on the other side in terms of disease challenge, and ultimately the whole bird is just a big seesaw, and you can put different things on to challenge or strengthen the bird in different places. But ultimately, it's almost like it's a living being, and it's all interconnected. As you can say, you can do one thing fantastically, but if you put enough problems in another area, then it will soon overpower it.
Is there one challenge, Dave, that you would point to in modern poultry? Let's say free range, given the number of units that they represent as a proportion of the UK flock. Is there one kind of thing that you see as like the most frequent, challenge for farmers to keep on top of that undermines flock health?
I'd say the greatest challenge out there, because it is challenging, because how many people are new to the sector? You go from no birds to 32,000 birds like that. It is challenging, but it's all the same thing. Farming is all the same thing. And it's a highly skilled job, and there's a lot of nous to it. The thing that causes the most issues is that it's not just a chicken. It's not just a chicken. It's just like any other piece of livestock. You need to be in tune with how they sound, how they look, what your numbers are. It's actually just locking in on the hen and watching it. And then what you'll find is the farmer that will, or the manager, whoever it is, that looks at that hen and looks at its performance, they will naturally seek answers out in the world, and they will fix each thing as it comes up. But it's the ability to show the hen the respect of what an incredible machine it is. I always use the analogy of, say I've got 2 Linford Christies. Okay, we're going to go back in time just because I'm showing my age now.
It's the 80s. Brilliant. Love it.
I'll go back too far. Two Usain Bolts. Let's do him instead. And I take one of them and I give him fleas. And then I'm going to give him worms. And then I'm going to give him water out of a puddle. Then I've got the other Usain. And this Usain drinks good water, he eats good food, he hasn't got fleas, he hasn't got worms. And I give him 4 years of living like that between the Olympics. Who wins? It's that simple. They're just a performance animal. High performance, genetic masterpieces of engineering. But it's the farmer's job and my job and everyone else's job get them to not get in their way. We remove every controllable factor in our little circle and we nail that and we get it completely perfect. And then guess what? You don't have to look at the industry and what it's doing because your chickens are doing the maximum output for what they're eating and drinking and the cost of your building. It's drilling it down to just maximizing every variable of performance and just letting them get out their own way.
And focusing on things that are within your circle of influence. But you're right, inevitably, quite often we spend most of our time talking about things that are external, don't we? Whatever Trump's done this week, or whatever government decides their next policy angle is going to be, or be right. The consistency comes from focusing on your own operation.
I'm trying to think, if I'm listening to this as a producer, I'm wanting a takeaway message here. And on one hand, it's vaccines pre-lay and vaccines during lay.
Absolutely. Yeah, every 6 weeks to 6 to 8 weeks. So.
And on the other hand, there's manage what you can manage on your site. Water, cleanliness, hygiene, absolutely has got to be part of it. I guess the rest of the environment, litter quality, air quality, enrichment, the whole piece about removing as much as possible any stress from that environment. They're the things. But just I'm still, if I'm a producer, not quite clear on what I can be doing differently today, tomorrow, the next day. What are my take-home messages? For example, vaccination. Is it a case that more vaccination is, more protection? It's an insurance policy that will better support health, or is there ever a case where too much vaccination can undermine the health of the bird? Provides too much challenge. Where's the line? And what are the take-home messages?
The things I always say when I speak to a free-range farm in particular are, first of all, you need to vaccinate correctly. If you vaccinate correctly, you will not need too frequent an interval, but you will still need enough. The vaccine will only protect for so long. Past 8 weeks, limited protection from IB vaccines. So if you set your interval at 10 weeks, no matter how well you vaccinate, you will get IB. So you need to have the correct interval of vaccination, the correct administration of the vaccination, and then you need to look at anything that's having a corrosive effect on the birds. So you go in there with open eyes. You don't see what you want to see, you see what's there. Have I got red mite? Am I observing the red mite? Do I know how to observe the red mite? Do I need someone to come in and just take me through it? How much red mite is too much red mite? Because I oversee a lot of birds and a lot of their performance. I like performance, that's my thing. And I was there at the launch of Exalt. I knew when that product came out, with how much our clients trusted us, it had to work. It was too expensive not to work when it was launched. So we did lots of work on how many red mite represent a loss of production, how many red mite equal a loss of bird numbers, when do you need to treat, what's an acceptable level. And for the farmer, their take home is to vaccinate and make sure that they get technical support. I help the whole industry, so even if you're not my customer, I will come and spend time with you as long as the vet's okayed it and everyone's okay in the chain. But that's what I do. You help people as much as you can. Get your vaccine nailed, get your red mite nailed, as in understand what you're doing with the systems, how to observe them, how to manage them. Check your water quality. There's lots of very skilled water engineers out there. Get your water quality right. And this magical thing happens. When all of those are in place, it's very rare for the wheels to fall off. And the profit in this game, because it's families a lot of the time building these free-range units, the profit and the ability to enjoy your job comes from having one good flock after another. Not hoping you get a good flock, but not doing any proactive measures to make sure you do. That's the key to making it fun.
Building on the success of the previous flock and avoiding the mistakes that may have been made. Learn from those and then keep doing the positive things.
And you only ever get so many problems. That's the thing. If my phone goes 50 times a day, it'll be 50 times where it's conversation about IB, E. coli, red mite, worms.
Let me go back to red mite just for a moment, because you mentioned a brand name there in Exalt, and obviously that's been on the market for what, you'll tell me, but it's got to be a decade. But the way of operating was very different compared to red mite treatment products of previous generation, and I guess those are still in use. To anyone listening who's not using that, what would your kind of message be about efficacy of that product versus the the slurry products or whatever there might be? What's your experience of its efficiency?
I can qualify this with, I've done a lot of spraying for red mite with a lot of different products and a lot of systems. Exalt, when it was launched, there was a certain amount of skepticism about what it would do. But this is the brilliant thing about our industry that's quite unique. We observe what each input does so accurately to decide whether it's worth investing in or not, that if it doesn't work, it dies. And it's so true. I've seen so many products come to the market that claim they do something, and they're not there 5 years later. So Exalt came along. What I immediately saw: reduced E. coli, highly reduced mortality, better bird quality, better egg quality, better feather cover, reduced feed intake from better feather cover. It's just a litany of things, even down to little things like the staff not complaining because they've got red mite living in their clothes.
Well, that's certainly what I remember from. Not we had a lot of red mite on breeders, but if you did have it, you did look forward to collecting those eggs. That's for sure.
And it's so funny how the industry changes. So when I got into it, it was a job for life. If you went into chickens, that's what you did. You were a chicken person. You were a stockman. You were a manager. Now it's a much more transient industry. People move through it. People move from other industries into it. And it has to be a hospitable environment for both the person working in the shed and for the chicken. And the key bit that I take away from observing this whole industry is nobody loses if you make a hen healthier. The farmer makes more money because he gets more eggs. The industry is seen as having healthy hens that can live a long time. The only reason a hen goes to 90 weeks now when it's brown, when it went to 70, is because we've got better at what we do. We've got better at keeping them healthier. So I've been all over the world and been very lucky. Nobody does it like the UK. Like, the way we look after our hens and the time we put into it is world leading. And for the whole industry, the more we all focus on just controlling disease, controlling parasites, controlling lighting conditions, making that hen as healthy as possible, everybody wins. More eggs, more sites, farms can expand because they're doing better. Obviously, I provide veterinary products that can be used to help, obviously in these things. But nobody loses by a hen producing more eggs.
And that's probably a fantastic note to wrap it up with, Dave. So thank you very much for sharing some of your extensive knowledge with us. And it sounds like you've got a lot more knowledge, so maybe we should get you back at some point to talk about a couple of different issues as well. But yeah,
Lovely. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
What a great guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never actually heard Dave speak, although I've heard an awful lot about him. And
he's wonderfully enthusiastic. I've been to various conferences where he's taken to the microphone and talked about the importance of vaccination or whatever it might be. But no, really good to do a session with a guest that I hope has delivered some useful tips and good value to those at kind of grassroots level.
And much as we said it was going to be about technical focus for layers, I think a huge amount of the discussions on vaccine efficacy and administration and attention to detail and bird health is completely relevant for broiler producers as well. So yeah, I think he was a really interesting guy to have on.
Hopefully the meat industry guys stuck through the episode. Thank you if you did. We should make it clear, shouldn't we, that we weren't sponsored by Exalt. We should have been, given the amount of airtime and approval that we all gave it. But
I think we're on commission now. I think that's how it works. I think we're on commission now for any sales on the back of this.
The money should be rolling in. Well, we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're not already, then please do subscribe to our feed. Make sure that you don't miss an episode each week, and we'll look forward to welcoming you back next time.
Great. See you again, Tom.